Inshallah. The next person is Dr. Anas, is the Director of Publication and Translation. He will be talking on what is next after AEMS. So how can AEMS, the Advancing Education in Muslim Societies result, can be used to disseminate information on Islamization of knowledge in the Muslim countries. So may I invite Dr. Anas to come.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد خاتم الأنبياء والمرسلين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Dr. Hisham started with some history, so I want to go back to history as well. It was 1984. I've just completed my PhD in American Studies, focusing on literature, and enjoying life when I received a phone call saying that two people would like to come and see you in Manchester. That was Dr. Jamal Barzanchi, may Allah bless his soul, and Dr. Hisham. And they came, and after we had dinner at a friend's house, Dr. Hisham asked me, we would like you to work with us for the next 30 years. I said, doing what? I don't do politics. I haven't done da'wah yet. But he said, no, it's all academic work. And since 1984, because after that, following that, I was sent the Ismail Farouqi's work plan. I read it, believe me, 3 times. I was so impressed. I thought, this is exactly what we have been waiting for. And I sat and translated it, the fastest translation I've ever done, in 3 days. I sent it to Dr. Ahmed Tutinchi. And that landed me in a trouble with the trouble IT. So I became director of translation, and among other things, and recently I've been asked to also to be director of publication. That was also about a year ago. Also, before I start about publication, I'm not going to talk about after AIMS, but before AIMS and with AIMS, what we are trying to do. But I attended a conference because we had a discussion about education, and Brother Anwar talked about education, and everybody here seems to be focusing on education. So a year ago, I attended a conference in Rome called Future Education. And it was the Adin Sardar who told me, Anas, you must go. I am tired. I've been invited. I cannot go. You must go. This is a very important conference. This is the second conference. So I said, being the second conference, they must have done something that we benefit from. And I looked at the list of the organizers, very impressive organizations and universities. And when I attended, I met about maybe 15 former and current ministers of education, rectors, academics from Harvard and other places. And I said, we are going to learn a great deal. After the first session, one of the organizers spoke, and he said, tell you people, we haven't done anything about education, and frankly, we don't know what to do about education. So it is a crisis. Okay, so these people have been meeting, they have a lot of resources, and they have not done, there is definitely a crisis of education, and I think when Dr. Ahmed Alwani called me and we started talking about AIMS, I felt now, well, this is the response that we need to have ourselves. These people have done nothing, let's try and do something, at least to our own societies. Following, of course, IIIT stands on 2 legs. One leg is, Dr. Ahmed and Dr. Hisham talked about, that's the generation of knowledge. And then if you generate knowledge and you don't disseminate it, it's not useful. So our publication and translation program aims to disseminate knowledge through publications, translations. Some publications we commission, a lot of publications are submitted to us, and we go through a very long process of checking, revising, sometimes rewriting. We also shared some concern with Professor Camila this morning. Very briefly, we talked about now people don't have the ability to write or to author. And our children actually are completely now unable. They just go through the telephones, yes, the mobiles, and they don't know. A lady admitted that her nephew doesn't know how to write full stop in Australia. He is about 12 years old. No writing ability whatsoever. But we are talking about people who are now assistant professors and associate professors. And she said even professors. And they send us manuscripts. Believe me, we have to sift through and go through very, very careful before we are able to produce them in a publishable form. So we started, I hope this presentation is working. Can you see it? Okay. We didn't have a department of publication and translation. There was translation and publication. So they were joined only last year. And so far, we at the IIIT have published almost 600 titles, and probably even more. I have to admit that we don't have the right count. But we have definitely more than 600, both in English and Arabic, and a lot of them have been translated into 39 languages. So these are the languages that we translate our books into, and that is the effort of Dr. Ahmed Tutunchi, who has actually worked very hard in establishing contacts in Africa and in Asia and Central Asia, and these are, not all the books have, not all the, I mean, I'm not saying all the 600 titles have been translated, no, but a lot of them have been translated, and I will show you samples, because PowerPoints, I know Dr. Ahmed didn't want to use PowerPoints because they are so enjoyable. They can take you on and on, you spend a lot of time. He wanted to be brief. I will try to be brief as well. So even in 2018, we had almost 490 titles under protection, under consideration in various languages in the world. So we started, I came across one book published by the IIIT, which had the word Ummah spelled in 7 different ways. So either two M's, one M, H at the end, or A at the end. So I said, this doesn't work. This is very embarrassing. So we published this guide, a guide for authors, translators, copy editors. Actually, we used our Chicago. People know the Chicago Manual of Style, but these are guidelines specific to our needs, and they were required after the Dr. Farouqi, may Allah bless his soul, published towards Islamic English. Some of you have familiar with the book. Unfortunately, it was published, printed and published after his death with a lot of mistakes. He would not have been very happy with that. But anyway, it's still useful. And so this guide has been sent to some of the translators and the author to use. We started with, you remember the book? This is the old style. And I started trying to convince some of the trustees to change the style. And there was some resistance at the beginning. But one day I took a bold step and I decided to change this. So I produced this contemplation. You remember Professor Malik Badri? No, this is his book. So I took the book, I translated the book, we published the book and printed it at Cambridge University, and I was waiting for the storm to follow from the trustees. No storm came, actually. Dr. Jamal called me and he said he was very impressed, and from now on, all publications have to go to London, and you are free to select any style you want. So our styles continues to develop. We produced occasional paper series. Some of you have seen some of them, and they're also through the MSS UK. We continued with the occasional paper series. Then we translated them into Spanish, into German, into a variety of Italian. And then also we initiated what we called the books in a brief. And actually, Dr. Camila, we gave you a set of that. The original set was included 17 booklets. I realized from my own experience, I used to read a book every week. Now I don't read a book in 3 months, believe me. And all of us are very busy. All of us are unable to read as much as we used to read. So we started abridging these books, our main books, where we call them books in brief. So people can read them very quickly and very quickly. And I know I was telling our colleagues yesterday, a friend of mine in the UK, he reads a lot. And I gave him many of our titles. Then one day he came to see me and I gave him the complete set, the 17 booklets. He called me after a couple of days. I said, Anas, I haven't read any of your books from cover to cover, but I have read all these. And so these are, people will learn a little bit about the topic. They are more interested, they go and look even for the original and try to read it. So this is the first set, Dr. Camilla, that we produced. The one you have now is not even yet, this is a digital printing for you only. So, it's not yet printed, but we are working on the printing it in Turkey. So we again translated them into Italian, into German, into many other languages. We started also in Arabic bibs, but that unfortunately hasn't continued yet, but we'll maybe Scandinavian. Then we started the Maqasid al-Sharia series, and Brother Anwar was very keen about that. We developed a number of books. You remember, you all heard of Jasir Oda. We found Jasir Oda. We encouraged him to, we published 2 of his books in Arabic and in English. And I told him, look, I myself don't understand Maqasid really well. So can you do, you know what they do? I wouldn't use this word, but it is used. They do mathematics for dummies, history for dummies, whatever. I said, well, do one for me on Maqasid, so I can understand. And he did. I think he did Maqasid for beginners, and the series continued. Last year, we organized a conference with the Turkish University on a tafsir Maqasidi, also that will be published soon. So we did also, to disseminate knowledge, we also used some, produced some audio library in both English and Arabic. And journals, you spoke about journals, and I hope maybe we can talk about cooperation in our, because we have 6 journals that we produce. We have, of course, you know, the AGES, the American Journal of Islamic Social Sciences. This was the history of that. That was in almost 1983, almost 1983, 1984. Then we have Islamiyat al-Ma'rifah, which is published in Arabic. Oh, you can see it in Arabic. Now we have Al-Ijtihad being published in Nigeria, and the 2 other journals in Bangladesh. GEMS is a new one, and that is the initiative of Dr. Ahmed Alwani. This is to disseminate the research and the writings on AIMS, advancing education in Muslim societies. This has not yet been published. When are we publishing the first one? June, inshallah, I think. June we should be able to publish the first, and we'll send you copies. So these are the journals. How many journals do you have, Professor Camila? Journals? 1? Yeah, okay. Well, maybe we can probably see how we can cooperate and support each other, inshallah, in this area. So these are the journals that we produce, and we have publication boards that we consult for English and Arabic publications, and these we request these top professors, advisors, experts, tell us when we receive a manuscript, does this fall within the aims and objectives and vision of the IIIT? Does it add anything to knowledge? Is it written in a publishable style? Only 3 questions. When they say yes, we send them for a blind peer review. Okay. We have, alhamdulillah, established ourselves, and that's why we managed to jointly publish with many organizations. We published the first ever British Muslim media guide with the British Council a couple of years ago. We published with Lambeth Palace. Also, you can see here the logo of Lambeth Palace and the small organization like AMSS UK, which was working closely with our London office there. Now the new department is actually based both in the United States and in London. I'm the director, Ubayd Talib is associate director, and we have assistant director, Shiraz Khan, who has been working with me for the last 30 years. And I always tell her there is no release for you before I go down. No, she went, sorry? And survived, oh yes, yeah. No, nobody, he knows what he's talking about. And survived, but she's a great girl, and she takes credit for a lot of the good work that we have produced. We have been trying to compile covers of not all the publications, but we haven't succeeded yet. So in Turkish, these are our translations into Turkish. This you have Bosnian, they've done excellent jobs there. Spanish, Japanese, and various other languages. And alhamdulillah, we managed to get an award of excellence. So this is the Muslim News Award of Excellence for contribution to Islamic thought, and also the MSS managed to get Award of Excellence. Now, translation and translation problems. I think we briefly touched upon this. There isn't definitely what we call intellectual deficiency. And all these great scholars are disappearing and we are not replacing them. So part of our work, whether through the generation of knowledge or the dissemination of knowledge, is to find young scholars, work with them, help to develop them, and give them, sort of support to develop their expertise and their knowledge. I know Dr. Ahmed has been very active in supporting some students here in Malaysia. In addition to that, the IIIT in the United States initiated something that is really developing extremely well, and that is the summer schools and the winter schools. So we organize summer schools, winter schools in many countries. Again, it's very difficult sometimes. Professor Camilla talk about winter school in, for example, in Malaysia or in South Africa, or summer school, because it's more or less the same. But in Turkey, for example, in the United States, you have been doing this for the last 10 years, almost. We started about 5 years in Bosnia, and we moved into Turkey and Georgia and other places. So with translation deficiency, that is a very, very serious issue. And there's somebody sitting there at the end who is aware of these problems we have with translations and translators. And again, I hope some of the universities here pay attention to this and try to train translators. Although translation doesn't come only through training, it's a gift. Either you have it or you don't have it. So if you have it, it needs to be trained and nourished. And I will end up with an example of a translator. I don't want to spend more time. We are waiting for the gem of the function, inshallah. And so just one experience about translation. One of our officers once sent me a CV of someone saying that he is one of the best translators on earth. English, Arabic, Arabic, English, French, you name it, and he can do it. So I said, okay, he's an Arab, so you translate into what? Into your mother tongue. So I sent him something written in, a paper in English to translate into Arabic. The paper was about a missionary called Samuel Zweimer. Most of you have heard of his name. He initiated this journal. What is it called? The Muslim World, I think. He was working in Egypt. So he sat and assessed his work and his accomplishment and decided, reached a conclusion that he's not making any success. And he related that to his lack of knowledge of Arabic. So he said, Samuel Zweimer decided to master Arabic. So the translation came, Samuel Smeber decided to get a master's degree in Arabic. At a time, 1907, Professor, 1907, there was not even master degree at that time. So these are the difficulties I have, we all have with translation. When I joined the IIIT, I had a very beautiful hair, and look what happened since then. Not because of the IIIT, no. You misunderstood. It's because I've been dealing with translation and translators. And we're talking about the future. I think you and I talked about what's going to happen with education in the future. And IIIT have formed partnership with the Center for Future Studies. Chris? Sorry? Center for Post-Normal Policies, headed by the Adin Saddar. And we want to see, it's not only we look at the future, we look at futures. What we don't know what's going to happen. So recently, we published, this is our first publication, the Post-Normal Times Reader, and we are now editing one called Islamic Futures. And I called him a few days ago, and I said, you are backward. I said, what do you mean me back? I educated you. I made you talk about the future and these things. I said, no, you have been talking about post-normal time for the last 10 years. It's no longer post-normal time, it's post-normal time. So we need really to think of the future. And I hope that some of our publications that we have started now on education as well as on post-normal, on the crisis that education is facing will reach you. It is a serious issue, and actually I don't think anybody really knows what needs to be done. Thank you very much for your patience, for listening. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.